William Hill Vegas sponsors Frampton versus Quigg on Sky Sports Box Office.
Radio Raheem here with Ed Hearn at the disco, just waiting for Carl Frampton and Scott Quigg to get their media workouts on. Look, this has been such a storied promotion before the fighters even got in the ring. There's so much history there. Talk to me about how this fight finally came together. It's been several years, people have been waiting. How did this moment finally arrive?
Well, it's been nearly 5 years. Going back from the days where I used to promote Carl Frampton. Scott Quigg was in an awful position. He had no TV dates, he couldn't get a fight, and we wanted the fight badly, and I think Scott did as well, but it was small. You talk about British title levels, both guys earning probably just breaking into the six figures, and everyone always says, no, wait till they're world champions, and you can do that, but sometimes it can go wrong. Here's an occasion where the timing has worked perfectly for the fans, for the broadcasters, and most importantly, the fighters. 2 belts on the line. Couldn't be any bigger, you know.
Now, it's not common that you find a promoter who's promoted each fighter at different times that then face each other in the future. Much has been made of your comments when you did have Frampton in your stable, and you felt like Frampton would win this fight, that he was an odds-on favorite. Yeah. What did you see in him then that made you think he could beat Quigg in those days?
I think 4 years ago, Scott Quigg would have lost to Carl Frampton. I do. I stand by those comments. I don't think he was anywhere near the fighter that he is now. I think Frampton, although he hasn't deteriorated, I'm not sure how many improvements he's made, and you can only judge that statement by his previous performances. Well, let's look at the Gonzalez performance, one of the worst performances of his career, against a non-puncher, down twice. And at the time, you know, when I made those comments when Carl Frampton stopped Kiko Martinez, I think in 7 or 8 rounds, in a great performance, Scott Quigg wasn't really even on the radar. Since then, after that fight, that was our last fight with Carl Frampton. We've built Scott Quigg up. He's won a world title. He's fought some top-level super bantamweights. He's demolished Kiko Martinez in 2 rounds. So as I stand before you here today, I believe Scott Quigg is the favourite for the fight, and I believe Scott Quigg will win the fight. As Bob Arum said, yesterday I was lying, today I'm telling the truth. But I don't. That's not the case, because back then, I feel the same as I did then. I knew what I was feeling at the time, and I believe Carl Frampton would have won the fight back then. They were British, Commonwealth level guys. Now they're world-class fighters. Scott Quigg is bigger, stronger, punching harder, mentally in a different place than I've ever seen him before. And I know it's a 50-50 fight. You know, I can't stand here and tell you he's definitely going to do this. But in my heart, I can't see anything but a Scott Quigg win. I might be wrong, but I think everybody's undecided.
Right, now you say it's a 50-50 fight. The fans are about where you are, but you mentioned the Gonzalez performance with Frampton. He's not coming off a great performance. Scott Quigg is, and he's looking really strong, but it's not a 50-50 split. So when it came to the promotion side, and McGuigan having to hash things out, did you feel like you had to give more than you wanted to just to make the fight happen?
For sure, we gave more. I took less, which is unusual, but seriously, we took a little bit less than them. But sometimes you have to do that to make the fight. Is Carl Frampton the bigger draw? Probably. So you have to take that into consideration. But also what I told Scott Quigg is, look at the people you've got to pay. Carl Frampton's got a pay list longer than my arm, people he's got to pay, whether it's Barry McGuigan, Cyclone Promotions, Shane McGuigan, Al Heyman. Scott Quigg's team's very simple. It's me and it's Joe Gallagher. So Scott Quigg will earn considerably more than Carl Frampton once they receive their net purses. But for Scott, it's not really about that. That's my job to make sure he gets what he deserves. He just wanted the fight. And once I tell him, this is the deal I feel you have to accept, he will listen to me, and he will now be involved in a fight that will break all kinds of records in terms of purses for fighters in that division. No fighter in the history of the sport has ever made this kind of money in a fight in this division. And sometimes fans criticise me and say, oh, you're always talking about money. Well, that's my job, to deliver for my fighters. I'm really sorry if it's a bit boring. But fighters have their own mind, they have advisors as well, and we're all under pressure to deliver for them. This is a tough sport, and when there's high risk, there needs to be high reward. And we're gambling for huge stakes this weekend.
Well, to be fair, if the fighters were getting ripped off, they'd blame you just as much, if not worse. So, well double on your job. When Barry McGuigan, it seemed to be, people were surprised that he kind of wound you up in the press conference. Is that a real rivalry between the two of you? You think he's just trying to get under your skin? Like, what's the history between you two that caused something like that?
Barry always wanted to be Carl's promoter. And obviously I was his promoter at one stage, and we clashed, and we went our separate ways. all this fight, you know, the negotiations of this fight were done with his son, because he knows his emotions are too strong to make logical business decisions. And when you let emotion rule in terms of business, you will always fail. So he stepped out, and I got the deal done with Jake McGuigan, who, you know, to this day I get on with very well. I like to wind up Barry McGuigan, I like to wind up Carl Frampton and Shane McGuigan, but I do it not just for the fans and for entertainment, I do it for an edge, because I feel like they're rattled. I feel like they like to have total control, whether it's in the boardroom, whether it's at the press conference, whether it's in any aspect. And if you take that away from them, they don't like it. And I think this fight is all about edges, you know, percents. You know, it's not a 70-30, it's a 58, it's a 52-48, it's a 51-49. So how can we nick that percent back? Is it by unsettling Carl Frampton? Is it by unsettling his team? You know, is it by some kind of something that we do in negotiations or in an arena on the night? You have to pull these little strokes and moves to get edges in life. And it won't be untoward, it'll be good fun and well-spirited, but I think the fans like it as well. You know, I mean, some guys are like, oh, you're such an arsehole the way I said, mate, relax, enjoy it, it's a pantomime. All the world's a stage. And it's our job as promoters to make the build-up exciting, it's part of the fight. You know, and I think sometimes, too often, you sit at a press conference and, you know, a fighter will say, yeah, I've had a great camp, I'm ready to fight. That's all I've got to say. You know, and as a promoter, you almost want to give him a kick up the behind and say, come on, sell the fight. Here we don't have to. The passion is real.
Now, from your end, you explain, okay, it's a wind-up, it's for the promotion, it's for the press, but for a promoter not to be able to put his emotions aside, to be able to actually negotiate the terms, makes it pretty real for him. What do you think is that emotion is rooted in? Is it jealousy against you? Is it, what could make this guy so upset that he couldn't actually even do his job?
I think that if you looked at me, you know, you might think he's flash or he's a little bit arrogant or, you know, and I like to do things my way. Everybody's still learning in life, but I think I know what I'm doing. I don't like to be questioned by other people who I believe are not qualified to do my job. So it's like me saying to a fighter, listen, you know, like when you throw that left hook, I'll be laughed out of town, you know, so I don't expect people who are not qualified or not good enough to do the job I do to start coming in and telling me how a job should be done. And we're lucky enough to have a business where we have a clear strategy. And if you don't want to be part of that strategy, you don't want to be part of that team, you can go elsewhere. You're not going to fall out. But I think one of my strongest points is my ability to leave emotion beside, you know, and that includes with you know, Amir Khan, Carl Frampton. You know, I'm cold to these people, towards these people. I don't look at Barry McGuigan and think, oh, that man winds me up. I just look at him and say, that's the guy I had to deal with to make this happen.
Now, talking about the little edges, there was much made again of the size of the ring.
Yeah.
Now, it's obvious that Frampton, based on wanting a bigger ring and his style, is probably going to want to fight off his back foot, create separation.
I keep hearing stories. That's not the case. The ring is 20 foot inside the ropes, which is quite standard. You know, there's bigger rings, and they haven't got a huge ring. We requested a 20 foot inside the ring, and they did as well. So, you know,
didn't even ask for a bigger ring.
No. I mean, you know, that's the size they wanted, and we were happy with that. I think Frampton will box off the back foot. I think he has to. I think if he stands and trades, he's getting taken out. And, you know, is he technically superior? Maybe. I think he thinks that's a silly question. But I think he's going to be surprised by how good Scott Quigg is technically. But it's a fascinating fight. You know, both can punch. You know, a lot's been made of Scott Quigg's power. I think he's the bigger puncher. Both guys can punch. You know, and both guys can be hurt. And, you know.
Are you looking for a knockout? Are you at all concerned that if this thing does go the whole 12, that maybe the advantage does go for Frampton?
Not really. I mean, they're both champions. One's fighting in Manchester. We know Carl's going to have a huge amount of support as well. But I think whoever wins will win on the night. I don't think it will go 12 rounds. I just think there's too much energy in the arena. Do you know what I mean? And however calm you are mentally, that nervous energy will result in you fighting a certain way. You know, it's just like Joshua against Charles Martin. You can't understand the energy that will be in the arena, and that will, whatever the game plan is, if it was Joshua, go and box for 6 rounds, don't you know? That's not happening. As soon as he lands on Charles Martin's chin, he's going for it. And that's the same with these two kids as well, because the noise, the emotion, the opportunity will be too much to be, to not take.
You know, you talk about Joshua and Martin. That's another situation where maybe a guy in Martin got a title a little bit easier than most guys have to win it. So much has come from the Frampton camp about the paper champion, Scott Quigg, and if you win this fight, is it, even though he is a legitimate, WBA champion, do you feel like this is the real moment that he can say, I'm finally a world champion without question?
Yeah, I feel a bit for Scott Quigg, because in the Salinas fight, we had a draw, and you never felt like he had that crowning moment. He's good enough to be a world champion. He's boxed some quality fighters. I feel like the Kiko win was kind of the night where people sort of gave him the respect that he deserves. Do you know what I mean? Just to go, yeah, you are real. Of course, beating Frampton will be right up there, but even put the belts aside, and people talk about putting belts in bins and stuff like that. I don't really go with that, because they mean something to the public still, but they definitely mean something to the fighters. And I know what Scott's belt means to him. But I think that ultimately this is about more than the belts, and I think that the profile of this fight will mean that the guy who wins is one of the hottest commodities in boxing.
You'll definitely give that rematch?
Rematch? The rematch doesn't have to happen. If it's a good fight and we want to do it again, then we'll do it again. But whoever
this time you're going to flip the terms?
No, yeah, that's right. If there is a rematch, the terms will be flipped. But there's no clause for an immediate rematch, so everything's on the line.
William Hill Vegas sponsors Frampton versus Quigg on Sky Sports Box Office.